Yeah, I mean, you're right. And look, let's talk about this. And I want to bring Kevin into this conversation. Is that look, there is this sort of science mythology that we sort of base our beliefs around. And I feel like, in particular, the atheist community, it's really hard to admit that. It's really hard to say, well, listen, I believe all of my beliefs based on, I like science and I like reason, and I'm a subscriber to popular science, and it's like, yeah, okay, but like for real, for real, for real. All these studies that people quote all the time in arguments with people. Have you actually read it? Like, have you actually started like from the abstract to the credits to the end? Have you actually done like, if we're being honest with ourselves, and I try, whenever I cite something on this show, I try to look at stuff beforehand, but I'm not an expert on most of the stuff that I read, right? So it's like, even if I read it from top to bottom, I'm not even in a position where I'm qualified to.
Testing 1 2. Okay, I think that's working. Yeah, it's working, right? Yep, cool.
Ready to connect. Click connect to show now. Thank you for calling Truth Wanted. You may listen to the show while waiting. A beeping noise will indicate when you are on with the host.
Capacity. Like, I'm just going to believe that for the rest of my life and just trust that people have done the work.
Hi, thank you for calling Truth Wanted. Please be advised if the host takes your call will be recorded for broadcast. Who am I speaking with?
Brandt.
Okay, and Brandt, are you theist or are you an atheist?
An atheist.
Okay, all right. And what, if any, pronouns would you like for us to list for you?
He, him is fine.
Okay, and where are you calling from?
Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Okay, perfect. And what did you want to talk about tonight?
Isn't the prompt like, is it viable to have a vegan diet, something along those lines?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about scrapitarianism, which is similar to veganism, but it includes eating scraps of meat that would be normally thrown away, and also hunting and fishing. So basically, you only purchase products that are vegan, but you also hunt and fish.
Okay. So, like, it avoids the, like, purchasing of it?
Yeah, indeed. So it avoids, like, supply chain causing of things, but due to the fact that animals naturally suffer quite drastically in the wild, I think to reduce net suffering, it would be a good thing to hunt and fish.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. All right. Perfect. I will get you in the queue then, Brant. And it's BRANDT, correct? Okay. I just want to make sure I have that spelled correctly for the crew here. But okay, I will get you in the queue then. And once I've got you in the queue, you are going to hear the show through this line here. Just be ready to go live at any moment. When you hear the beep, is when you'll be on the air with the host. And just don't ask if they can hear you. Just assume they can. They'll let you know if they can't. Okay?
Groovy. Thank you.
Perfect.
You have been put in the holding queue. A beeping noise will indicate when you are on with the host.
Anybody can make up any story, and they write a book and they sell it. It's an industry. It's an industry now to convince the gullible and the naive that portals and lizards things and yeah, it's just an industry. They're just making money.
I hear what you're saying, Coyote Boy, but I want to make this point clear, and we should probably wrap up this call after this, is that, look,
Yes.
I recently watched a video about Dan Ariely. This is a guy who is an economist who's written several books, popular science books on behavioral economics. I read 2 of his books, and I just saw a thing saying how a lot of the studies that he talks about were bullshit and like weren't real. And there's kind of been like this scandal in his career. He went on NPR and said, hey, it turns out dentists can only both agree whether they see a cavity in an x-ray about 50% of the time, is what he said. And the NPR guy is like, wow, 50% is like, yeah, that's what we found with this thing. And suddenly the people who are actually qualified to talk about this, aka dentists, called in and said, hey, this is actually dumb and this is BS, and there's a huge backlash on it. And this guy has had a career since then. I mean, like, he's somebody who has been respected in scientific communities and still peddling BS. Yeah, is it being pregnant by Venus monsters or whatever? No. But it comes with a veneer of credibility by saying, look, I'm a person with a degree and here's a study I'm citing. And yet the truth value is just as false, right? It's equally not true. So I don't know. There's something to be said about the veneer of acceptability when it comes to sciences. Is there a line to be drawn on some stuff? Sure. But that doesn't mean that the stuff that sounds more credible is more credible either. It's very complicated.
I don't even think it has to be credible anymore.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So there was a new study out that more people believe what Trump says, and than they do than their family and friends and even their priests and pastors. So they're discounting everyone just to believe that. So you have to willingly be open that up, the gullibility factor to do that.
Yeah, it's true. I think we got to wrap up this call here, Coyote Boy. Thanks so much for calling in, though. Appreciate your contribution to the show. The parable of the 100th monkey, or the 100th monkey effect. Well, that's such an interesting thing. I now know a new thing, and I can sound smart at parties and say, this seems like a case of the 100th monkey effect, which, hey, it's that intellectual veneer, right? That's what I'm talking about. Before we move on to some other callers, though, we have a brand new, exciting way that you can support the ACA. And I have a video to show you on how to do it. So we're going to play that for you right now.
Have you ever wanted to make a permanent impact on the atheist community of Austin? Help support our space for free thought by buying a custom engraved brick to be laid on the building grounds to help raise funds for improvements. Our building has stood as a beacon for years, bringing people together. But 3 years of emptiness due to the pandemic have taken a toll, leaving it in disrepair.
Hopefully the call
restore
show
this hub of
will
connection
have
and
me come on
support
pretty
by
soon.
buying a brick.
Right now it's just different callers calling in, and I'm trying to get on the show. So who knows when that will happen, if it will happen. But so far I've been lucky the last couple of weeks, and I've got on the show, so I have a feeling I'll be on.
We are putting some money into fixing up the building, folks. Obviously, right now, I'm doing the show from my home. But look, we still have computers and stuff that actually stream the show at the building, and we're still doing live shows at least once a month at the building, and of course, all the other events. So there is a reason to invest in the building, especially if you ever come down to Austin, you want to see the brick yourself. That's something to look forward to, right? So just another way for you to support the ACA and what we're doing. So check it out and see if you can do that. But if you can't, there's other ways you can support the ACA, like our merchandise. Have you guys seen some of the stuff that we've been putting on our stores? Because we got t-shirts, we got mugs, we've got hoodies, we've got all the stuff. This month's shirt is a really good one. It's saying, if the earth was flat and it put its pants on, would it put it on that way or put it on the other way? It's kind of hard to describe in audio form. But if you see the picture of it, it is a pretty funny
shirts. So we're committed to, the funny shirts at least once a month. This will be the monthly exclusive. So check that out if you haven't already. And one more thing before we move on, if you want to hear our content in audio only, you can go to tiny.cc/AEN podcast for all of the latest shows in audio form. And it's really cool. I like to do that. I'm one of those folks that likes to listen to stuff like this while I'm washing dishes or doing other stuff. So check it out if you're like me too. And with that out of the way, Kevin, let's talk to some more folks who want to talk to us. I think we should talk to Branch, who's calling in from Wisconsin. Branch wants to talk about scrapitarianism, which is a new vocabulary word for me. Branch, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hello. Yeah, scriptarianism is kind of a term that I practically made up myself, but I think I've heard it around in different spheres. It's basically the idea that you should purchase products in terms of supply and demand chain, only vegan-wise, but in terms of your consumption of meat products, you can do so when it comes to items that are being thrown away, that are expired, basically things that are outside of the supply and demand chain. And I also believe personally that to reduce net suffering, it's actually a good thing to hunt and fish due to the fact that these animals will suffer and die pretty brutal deaths in the wild as well. So if you want to talk about that, I'd also be interested in doing so.
So the word I've used for myself is freegan. I don't know if you ever heard that, which
Freegan.
is just like, yeah, if it's like food that's going to be thrown away or if it's not going to be towards any use, I think that's fair game. I don't feel any guilt in consuming those kinds of animal products because it's like, well, the damage is already done. And if I'm not directly giving money towards something that's going to be, increasing that demand, I don't see the harm in consuming that. So that's something that I've appreciated for myself. Kevin, you look like you wanted to say something.
Well, I think just the amount of food that households throw away and restaurants throw away and grocery stores throw away. I mean, and we have laws that don't allow bakeries to give their, day-old bread and grocery stores to give, produce that's coming to expiration. So yeah, I think if we can use our resources on the planet much better, that obviously is going to be better for everyone. Reduce consumption, reduce resources that go to need to produce new food or even throw away that food. So yeah, those are all good things for our planet.
Yeah, so I think we're all on the same page there, Brant. Let's talk about your second thing there, though, which was this idea that hunting and wilderness sort of crafting, I guess, is still ethical. I would, obviously I'm sympathetic to the vegan worldview, as I said, and we talked. For some reason, we had like a bunch of people talking about veganism on the last 2 episodes of Talk Heathen, and so I guess a lot of people figured out for the first time that I'm vegan. But since we're talking about it here, I think that's a contentious claim with other vegans. In my experience, there is not a consensus amongst vegan communities about what actually to do, how to handle wild animals. There's obviously some that support some kinds of practices, for example, spading for invasive species, for example, right? That seems like a good idea. But then there's some that say, well, we shouldn't even be touching animals at all. Why should we be in charge of how they live their lives and mutilating their bodies for human interests, right? There's a lot in my mind to be left up in the air. And I don't know if I've landed one way or the other when it comes to that position, but maybe you can tell me more about why you have your position, Brant.
Yeah. Basically, I'm a negative utilitarian or I subscribe to negative utilitarianism or painism, which is very similar to the idea of negative utilitarianism. So when it comes down to it, I basically just take into account the experiences of beings and specifically their pain. And I don't think that death is a bad thing due to the fact that it's just a transition to a lack of sentience, a lack of experience. So death can't be bad. Dying can be bad, but all things are going to go through that process eventually. And given predation and parasites and stuff like that, it's not going to be very blissful in the wild. So I basically just am coming from a pain assessment point of view, rather than a rights approach, because I basically think that animals are constantly violating each other's rights. People are constantly violating each other's rights. If we really took rights seriously, we would constantly be in a conundrum of like basically just being stationary and not being able to even move a muscle without risking violating something's right. So, from my perspective, I just assess pain, and I think that hunting and fishing are a valid form to get protein while also reducing net suffering in the wild.
All right, Kevin, what do you think?
I'm not a hunter. I am a meat eater, and so yeah. So I also think people who eat meat should know the system and know where their food comes from. So yeah. So there's a woman. I'm in a community garden, and she has quail, and she's like, "Would you like me to help me cull the quail?" And in my head, no, I really wouldn't like to do that. But I said yes, because if I'm eating chickens and other poultry, I should know how that's done. So as a non-hunter, I would think, and I like your example of pain, but I would think a good hunter would better at a shot, a quicker kill. I would see that as a good thing. A bad hunter, I would think, could inflict a lot more pain than relieve pain.
Yeah, there is that too, right? Hunting isn't always a guarantee for how you alleviate pain, right? And I'm sure any hunter can tell you a story of how they didn't quite get a clean kill. I know this not as a hunter myself, just growing up in Texas, right, where it's just like I know people who hunt, kind of a thing. But another thing I would consider with this position, first of all, I think I would agree with the idea that and this isn't sustainable, but if everybody on Earth could subsist by hunting rather than farming, and we can't do that with the population that we have, but if it were possible, in my mind, that seems to be more ethical, because we do farm over too much, and we do cause a countless amount of suffering towards animals. And the worst part of it is not all of them even goes to our food. Sometimes we have a breakout of mad cow disease, and you just have to kill a whole population and cut their lives short. And another thing with farming is, of course, particularly like cows and pigs, for example, you are cutting off their lives significantly to what they would be, normally live to. Not to say that hunting doesn't do the same thing, but there's a bit more variable, right? Like with farming, it's like, no, you get to live up to here, and like that's kind of it. So there's pros and cons to this approach. I think if somebody's out there living off the land truly, and they're subsisting themselves, I have way less of a problem and have way less of a thing to say about it than the folks who are just like, oh, well, I have to do this way because I have to, and this is the way I've always lived, and I can't possibly question the way that I consume products, and they buy the same shit at Walmart every week, right? Like that's like, to me, just totally different planes. But anyway, Brant, what do you think?
I basically agree that like when it comes to the animal's death, if it's not a clean kill, you are going to be manifesting a lot of pain in the world, which is a bad thing. But I do think that like in terms of the animal's entire lifespan, you would be probably reducing net suffering on the whole. Painism, though, would basically say, I mean, that's the difference between negative utilitarianism and painism. Is negative utilitarianism would basically say that like what you're saying is really is invalid because of the net reduction of pain, and painism would basically say that like, no, what you're saying has a really valid concern because from the animal's perspective, it's really intense, essentially, the suffering. Another thing that I want to consider is you said sustainability being a factor. I guess we could completely live off of a plant-based diet without having any like meat consumption whatsoever. But for like for the demand, I would say that like there's going to always be a demand, especially in the legal markets, that hunting could be a way to satisfy that demand properly. And I'm also an antinatalist. I've been on the show before, so I don't really think we would have issues of sustainability given if antinatalism does hopefully take off. Under my perspective, I say hopefully.
Yeah, that's another thing too, because again, if you are an antinatalist, though, like hunting kind of is contrary to the perspective of modern hunting practices, because like we literally have like deer farms, right? Like we literally have game animals that are grown for hunting, right? So if you're an antinatalist, you are like making things born just to be hunted. And again, it's one thing to hunt to subsist. It's another thing to hunt for pleasure, which 90% of the people that I grew up with hunted for pleasure, right? I have had like deer jerky before, and it has been done, but that's definitely not most people that I've met that are into hunting. It's definitely a sport for a lot of folks. And so, like, what do? Do you regulate hunting and say, oh, if you kill this animal, you have to use its parts or something? I don't know how you could effectively organize a society like that, but maybe you have some ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't really take account intentions. I mean, I think intentions are kind of good to understand like future projections of like how people will interact with the other individuals and if they'll end up causing net pain on accident or purposefully. But when
Yeah.
it comes down to it, I don't really think intentions per se are what I really evaluate. So when it comes down to it, the animal's pain is going to be relieved, in my perspective, no matter what, and someone is getting joy, whether it's from taste pleasure or from the pleasure of the kill. So either way, it's a unnecessary pleasure due to the fact that we can get the protein sources from plant-based products. So the way I look at it is, it's not much of a difference from my perspective on if it's a trophy kill or if it's a kill for the taste of the jerky.
See, that's where I would disagree, because again, as a vegan, right, what I understand veganism to be is a conscious effort to abstain from the use of animal products as much as possible. And there are different reasons why people are vegan, right? For me, it's philosophical. It's not for health reasons. It's not even for environmental reasons necessarily, although I do think it is the more environmentally efficient option overall. It's purely because I recognize beings have a capacity for suffering. If you're a mammal and you have a nervous system, you can suffer. Like that seems very clear to me. There's evolutionary evidence for it. And it's just how the world works. And so like, I want to try to alleviate that as much as possible. So that's that by saying like, oh, it's okay for hunting or we shouldn't consider, hunting for sport as something as a net negative. To me, I would disagree. I think that has to be, if we're following a vegan philosophy, right?
Even as a meat eater, I think there's a big difference between trophy hunting and going out and raising animals to kill animals, or having a farm in Texas where you can go out and shoot, or even going out and use a deer that you're not, in the wild that you're not going to use.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess I should say when
I have that ethical philosophical.
I guess I should clarify when it comes to like what I meant by trophy hunting. I guess I should clarify as an antinatalist. I do think we should put an end to like government incentive programs to like have our tax dollars go to like breeding animals and stuff like that, and for hunting purposes. So it would be cool if sport hunting of wild animals that aren't brought into existence by humans, but I wouldn't be for sport hunting animals brought into existence for that purpose.
Yeah, which is unfortunately like what happens, right? It's like game animal. Well, it depends. Some are considered invasive species. Like for example, in the hill country in Texas, right? You have a lot of deer elk. Wait, no, that's not the term for them. I'm mule deer. Excuse me, mule deer. There we go. Mule elk. It's mule elk. I don't know my animals. Point is, they are considered an invasive species every year, and so basically people have like free range to hunt them for like parts of the year. But it's like if we really wanted to effectively eliminate the population, like hunting would not be the way to do it. Like there's lots of other ways. I mean, you could basically commit genophage, right? You could like make sure that they don't reproduce anymore, or you could do these other things. But like there is a viable enough industry there that people will want to hunt, and people will keep it there. So even though they fall under invasive species, my point in saying all this is that there's always going to be loopholes, right? There's always going to be people whose interest is in this for the sport of this stuff. So I'm very pessimistic as far as like how we could make positive hunting incentives, because I feel like it's I don't know. I would rather abstain from the whole practice, right? If I can sustain and live on a plant-based diet without having to do any of that, that just seems like the better option for me. I don't know. No reason to just start hunting now, right?
Yeah,
and even as a meat eater, I acknowledge that a plant-based existence is going to be better for the environment, more sustainable. So probably a lot less suffering. just
Yeah.
for people just in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, Brant, that's all the time that we got for this call. But I appreciate you calling in on this topic. Thanks so much for sharing your.
Well, I didn't get to make a counterpoint about the fact that, technically speaking, the whole sustainability thing and protecting the environment actually is pro-suffering, but, you know, I mean, it does allow for things brought into existence more so when suffering persisted on and all that. But let's see what he's got to say. Okay.
There you go. So it's the hot topic as of
And now you know you can go and get your plant-based sausage at Cracker Barrel.
That's right. Yeah, totally. So that's a thing for all you Cracker Barrel fans out there. But I will say, if you're the kind of person that goes on the Cracker Barrel Facebook group to complain about plant-based sausages being offered on the menu, like I'm sorry, you're a loser. I don't use that term lightly. You're just the definition of a loser. I don't know. Your priorities are not straight. You need to touch grass. Go do something. Because, like, man, that is just not where you should be putting your energy. But anyway, that aside, I want to tell you guys quickly about some more ways you can support the ACA. Just so you're aware, of course, we do have super chats, and we are accepting them, and we will read them live on the air, as long as what you've written is YouTube appropriate, of course. So if you want to make me say something funny, or maybe Kevin, if Kevin's down for it, give us some super chats and we'll be happy to do that. Another way is something I already mentioned, of course, is through Patreon.
Well, okay, cool. Let's see. We've done our call show. I got on the call show pretty fast. It's a half-an-hour segment, perfect as usual. And yeah, anybody that wants to go back and watch the interview, feel free to do so. Basically, just talking about scrapitarianism, hunting, negative utilitarian painism, stuff like that. But briefly brought up painism, so cool, painism. And all, yeah, just spewing vegan ethics and scrapitarian ethics, which is basically the same thing, but better because veganism doesn't address wildlife suffering. But yes, goodbye. Take care. Au revoir. I shall be back in a couple hours. Maybe. I don't fucking know. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to end the stream. Fuck it. I'm just going to grab my phone and turn on Uber. I'm going to keep streaming. Where's your hair? It's on my head, my boy. My hair is on my head, my boy. You just can't see it because it's dark. Yeah, the lighting was off. Damn, son. Somebody just tipped me. What did they tip me? They must have tipped me fucking $10 or some shit. Because I just went from like 71 to 81. Or 70. I don't know. They tipped me $5 or they fucking tipped me $10. I don't know what tipped me there. For Uber. I guess you could say we wait for it. I can't wait for it again. We're shenanigan again. Yes. But yeah, I've done 9 trips today at Uber. I've worked a total of 6 hours and I've made $82. So not the best, but it's okay money. You're rich. I know, right? I'm amazingly rich. I'm beyond belief. You know what? You guys never need to donate me any money. Ignore that PayPal thing that I have linked in my bio. You don't need to send me anything. I'm rich. Please help me. Just kidding. I'm actually doing pretty good. But if you want to send me money, you're more than welcome to. I need to pay off that camper eventually once I get it. But yeah, let's just turn the Uber app on. Totally not a corny joke from Zach and Cody. Oh my god. Zach and Cody's a pretty good one. What do you like, Zach and Cody or Sweet Life and Dak? Which one's better? The answer is obviously Sweet Life and Dak, but I mean, I'm just joking. The original one is pretty good, but Sweet Life and Dak was also fucking bop. Let's see if I just remember what I was gonna do. What would I remember doing? I probably was just going to like fucking watch YouTube or something. No, I was sit with your money. You hear me? Yeah, I got so far this week. Let's see how much money I've earned and how much I've worked. 20 hours I've worked and I've made $263. That's not that much, but I've worked too much. I mean, most of that's just sitting on the admin line, so fuck it, whatever. Damn, not me. Okay, let's do some ethics. Let's listen to Gary yell at us about how we're horrible people. Fuck, you're right. Do not watch is live and Vegan Gains is live. Okay, yo, Kane, I'm a dip. Do not watch is live. You know how it is. I'd rather be on do not watch this thing, being like ruining their day and making their days be like, oh, it's this guy again, more than being here, being like getting like one view. So I'd rather get the bunch of views and make them all be like, why am I alive? And then so Kane's like, huh? Do you know what do not watch is? Do not watch the channel? Type in do not watch and there's like and you will find a live stream and I will be on that live stream. Yeah, do as your prophet says and look up how to use your penis to catch catfish. It's a thing. Anyways, I'm gonna go on the do not watch podcast. Yes.